This is Wall Street Week. I'm David Weston, bringing you stories of capitalism. This week, an industrial boom south of the border. We went to Mexico to see how tariffs and transportation costs are reshaping the American supply chain and what that could mean for China. But we begin with a biography, not one about a person or even really a thing. How do we classify something like artificial intelligence? Something that has never existed before and something that might be beyond our understanding. This is a story about identity, who we are as humans, whether our identity is being merged with computers, and if so, what we need to do about it.
There is nothing special about people. They are very wonderful things. We're incredibly complicated, and we're very wonderful to other people. People are what we care about. We've evolved that way. But there's nothing that you can't replicate in other material.
If anyone should know about whether computers can do everything that humans can, it would be Geoffrey Hinton. The computer scientist and University of Toronto professor emeritus is known as the godfather of AI. After working for over a decade at Google, he quit his job in 2023 and became outspoken about the risks of the technology he helped pioneer. This, even as he continues to receive accolades for his work. We sat down with him after he had just received the Nobel Prize in Physics.
I was in a hotel in California and my phone went off at 1 in the morning. And I thought about not answering it. And then they said I won the Nobel Prize in Physics. And I thought, wait a minute, I'm not a physicist, this can't be right.
But it was right. And in December, it will be Professor Hinton, along with John Hopfield, who will be receiving the award at a ceremony in Stockholm for their breakthrough work on machine learning. That generative AI is reshaping the business landscape is beyond doubt. Bloomberg Intelligence expects it to drive big tech firms to nearly double their capex from 2023 to 2025, with revenue from AI set to approach $1 trillion by the end of the decade. But before we get to the future of AI, we turn to its past. We asked Geoffrey Hinton to go back to the beginning, when this new creature that can do what humans can do first arrived.
I would say it was born in about 1983 with something that Terry Sinofsky and I did, which was called the Boltzmann machine. It never really panned out, but it was a generative AI. It was a model that would generate images. Not very good images, but it would generate them.
Well, there could be a debate about the birth of it, but I would go all the way back to Alan Turing and then John von Neumann, so that would be in the 30s, 40s, and 50s.
Marty Chavez of 6th Street has spent his career developing AI, and he traces its birth back to the very foundations of computer science.
So it's been around a while, right? People thinking about what is computation? What is the nature of computation? And do human beings do computations? Is everything that's happening in our brains or our minds just a form of computation? People were asking these questions really almost 100 years ago and starting to work on it.
Artificial intelligence and robotics are rapidly advancing fields of technology.
Whatever the beginnings of AI, most agree that it took many people and many decades to get here. But they also agree that, in just the last few years, the game has changed. A series of rapid breakthroughs has brought what were far-out predictions much closer to reality.
The big milestone is the large language models, which work by looking at a context and then generating guesses about what they think the next word should be. That's why they're generative. Then that was followed by things like DALL-E from OpenAI that could generate images. Before that, there were things that could generate captions for images. So they would look at an image and then they would generate a string of words that describe the image. Those were the early versions of generative AI. Now we're getting multimodal chatbots, which can generate everything. They can generate images and language.
The huge milestone that I think of is one that we hit 2016, 2017. This was a milestone in the evolution of the neural networks. It maybe didn't get a lot of public attention, but it certainly got the attention of everybody in the field. And this milestone came about because of the work of many of the researchers I mentioned a few of them for over decades. But another contributor to the milestone was the internet and the sudden availability of vast amounts of labeled data.
The breakthroughs that Hinton and others worked to achieve have developed artificial intelligence to the point that now, in a text conversation, it might be indistinguishable from a human being. A study this year by cognitive scientists at UC San Diego showed that people mistook ChatGPT for a human more than 50% of the time, clearing the bar for the so-called Turing test. Humans themselves only pass the test about 2/3 of the time. But as surprising as that is, it could be just the beginning.
How far along is AI in its life? Again, if we're anthropomorphizing here. Is it a child? Is it an adolescent? Where is it?
It's more like a toddler, maybe like a 3-year-old.
Let's imagine that we're in that gangly, awkward teenager phase of AI. What happens next? There's a huge debate.
Whether AI is a toddler or an adolescent, today the question is, how far can it go? How much can it learn? And perhaps most important, will it catch up to us humans? For Geoffrey Hinton, it's a matter of when, not if.
Does that mean that generative artificial intelligence will be able to do whatever humans can do? Is there anything that it cannot do that we humans can do?
Yes. Most people have the belief there's something very special about people, which is consciousness or sentience or subjective experience. And we have this inner theatre. That's probably all nonsense. The history of it is these large language models predicting the next word using backpropagation were initially designed as a model of how people work. Now, there's a whole bunch of people who believe in symbolic logic, and that's how people must think. They think it must be true, who think people work a completely different way. And they're wrong. They never manage to produce stuff that works nearly as well as these big language models. So they'll tell you these big language models are quite unlike people. They're just using correlations and so on, and it's all just not really understanding. No, our best model of how people understand is exactly the same model as how these big language models understand. They're just like us, and they're much more like us than they are like standard computer software. So understanding is all about converting words into features, having the features interact, and having those predict the next word. We do it pretty much the same way they do it.
What about creativity? Can generative AI be as creative as humans are?
As someone else might have said, there you go again. You want people to be special. If you take standard tests of creativity, AIs already do better than most people.
What about in a large corporation? You have worker bees, we often refer to them, then you have middle management, upper management, and CEOs. Could they replace CEOs?
Okay, so there's a good scenario for the future, which goes like this. Suppose you have a big company with a rather dumb CEO. Maybe he's the son of the previous CEO. But he has an executive assistant who's very good, almost certainly a woman. This executive assistant is asked to achieve things by the dumb CEO, and she achieves them in ways he doesn't understand and would never have thought of. So he becomes much more effective. He gets what he wants. He thinks he's doing it. It all happens behind the scenes and very efficiently. That's how it could be if we all had our own AI assistants that were smarter than us, and they were thoroughly benevolent, and they never wanted to take over. We could somehow achieve that. That's the good scenario.
I had a boss once in business who said a danger is wishing yourself to success. Do we wish ourselves to a safer world by hoping that generative AI cannot do everything we can do? Because it might be very threatening to many people if we believed it can do everything we can do.
Yes, it is very threatening, and I'm very worried about it. And we should definitely put huge effort right now into figuring out whether we can keep control of it.
What effort should we put forward? What should we do?
Okay, so for something like climate change, everybody knows what we should do. There's a very simple solution: just don't burn carbon. It's just we don't have the political will. We still give big subsidies to oil companies, which is lunatic. So we know what to do, we just won't do it. With AI, to keep AI safe from the long-term danger of more intelligent things than us just taking over from us, we don't even know what to do. What we need to do now is understand that there really is this danger. These things really do understand, and they really are going to get smarter than us. But also how are we going to keep control of them? We have some chance because we're creating them.